Harvard-trained neuroscientist and New York Times best-selling author, Lisa Genova has spent the last few decades helping people understand brain conditions through her line of fictional books. And her newest novel is called More or Less Maddy. It gives readers a glimpse into what it's like to live with bipolar disorder from the perspective of Maddie Banks, an NYU freshman whose life completely changes once she receives a diagnosis. And Lisa joins us in studio today with more on the book. Good morning. Great to have you in studio.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Thanks.
Tell us about Maddie. Who is she, and how did you come up with her storyline for this book?
Okay, so she is 19 years old, which is the average age of onset for bipolar disorder. She has just finished her freshman year at NYU, and she's like a lot of young people, 1 foot into adulthood, really trying to establish her identity amidst a lot of pressure from culture to find and establish a normal life, right?
Yeah.
Like go to college, find a major, get a job, get married, all the things. And she's sort of questioning that, and in swoops this diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And it's so big, it's so overwhelming and chaotic, and it really does sort of say, this is who you are now.
Yeah.
So she has to grapple with this new reality and try to figure out how to live with this, and maybe figure out the distinction between I am bipolar and I have bipolar.
Right, and you delve into that. Almost all of the books you've written since 2007, all of your characters have dealt with some type of a brain condition. Of course, it's part of your training.
Yeah.
You could have written on any of these topics. There's a number of them. Why did you choose bipolar disorder?
So I write about anybody living with anything going on from the neck up, because people tend to be ignored, feared, and misunderstood if they've got something going on in their brains.
Yeah.
And so I tackled neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's and still Alice, brain injury, autism. I hadn't yet written anything about something that's categorized as mental illness. So I knew I wanted to go there next, and I really, in looking a little bit, is it depression, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders? Those are all there, but bipolar disorders seem to be hiding in plain sight everywhere.
Interesting.
I mean, it's so pervasive in our world.
Yeah.
And no one's talking about it.
Yes, and so that's why I wanted to ask you about, you're getting conversations going, but you're writing about it in fiction.
Yeah.
Tell me about the choice to share the information that you have that way.
Yeah, so I figured out the magic of fiction with Still Alice, and then I just kept going, because here's the deal. Like, if I don't know anyone with bipolar disorder, if it's not affecting me or a loved one, I'm not going to pick up a book about it that's nonfiction. I'm not going to read a textbook. I did that. You're welcome. But you're not going to probably pick up a memoir either.
No.
But a story you might read. You might pick up a novel. You might watch a movie. So story is a way in. It's accessible, and it's got this magical way of allowing us to walk in someone else's shoes and to develop empathy for someone who lives a very different life than us.
And you do it so well. There are scenes from the pages of Still Alice that I still remember in my mind. You did such a great job of describing it. So then I want to ask you about bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
What did you discover in your research, when you picked up the textbooks about bipolar disorder, and about the stigma that surrounds it?
Yeah, it's massive. Thank you. And by the way, I hope that happens again for you with this book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I learned so much, and it's not just reading books. I talked to psychiatrists, psychologists, the world's thought leaders in bipolar research and treatment, people who have it and their loved ones. I think I learned so much. The biggest thing I probably learned is just there's so much misconception out there. There's so much judgment and dismissiveness and distrust that comes when you learn that someone has something called mental illness. If you have bipolar disorder, people shy away immediately. So we don't know a lot about the nuances and the complexity and the chaos and the devastation of this. Really hard to stay on the medications. I gained a lot of compassion and space for grace for anyone who goes off their meds. The drugs for bipolar disorder are not designed for it. There's a lot of side effects. It's super hard. This isn't diagnosed with a blood test or a brain scan. It's a conversation. So it makes sense to me that anyone newly diagnosed with this at some point would be like, do I really have this? This is really hard to be on these meds. I'm going to try and go off and see how I do. So a lot more grace and less judgment and more compassion.
Oh, you're going to find all of that in the pages of this book, which is More or Less Maddy. Lisa Genova, great to have you here in studio. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.